Again, this is one of the sign language interpreters. We are unable to hear any of the panelists currently speaking. Thank you. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. We cannot hear the panelists. This is one of the interpreters. Thank you.
And Frank will close us with some upcoming projects before we open it up to your questions. So in just a moment, you are going to see a QR code on the screen. We also have codes throughout the office or throughout our room today. This is an opportunity for you guys to submit your questions using Mentimeter, and that'll be up here in just a moment. In the meantime, you could also go to menti.com, and in a moment you will be able to put your code into your phone. It'll join you to our poll. It'll be just a moment, and we appreciate your patience. So we do have some seats up front and in the middle if anybody would like to take a seat. And if you do go to menti.com, you can type in the code 5274063. Again, that is 5274063. And it looks like we already have some people participating in our poll. The first question we have is, what is your role in the construction industry? And it looks like we have, it's coming in. A few people are bringing it in. So we have about 20 people who've participated so far in this question. And so far it looks like we have a number of consultants and professional services in the room. So I think we're going to go ahead and come back to this QR code here in a minute. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to John to maybe give us some opening remarks.
Thanks, Kimberly. Again, my name is John White. I'm with Washington State Department of Transportation. I'm an assistant secretary at WashDOT, and probably the important thing about my title is the fact that I oversee the mega programs within WashDOT. From my background, I've spent about 2 decades involved in mega programs up in the Puget Sound area. And I think one of the things here in contemplating delivering the IBR program here is that we're bringing doing our best here to bring a lot of the lessons learned and skill sets and things as we look towards design and construction of the IBR program, bringing some of that mega programs talent and experience here to delivering this program. It's been over 20 years of contemplation, and we are closer than we've ever been here. As you're going to hear today, we are very close to initiating procurement. Our intention here today is to walk through our intended schedule, some of the things you should expect to see as part of that procurement, and inform you before the procurement begins. I think another thing that we're doing here is working to continue to make our connections with prime contractors and potential prime contractors so that we can continue to talk about the scopes and expectations for this delivery of this critical Columbia River Bridges replacement project here that is our first step forward. There's a quote here I have. I'm not big on speaking points, but there's a quote here that's kind of fun. In 1915, 24 contractors submitted bids within 6 weeks of the bid opening to build the initial Columbia River Bridge. So you can do the math there. Over 100 years later. And again, that's a key point. One of these bridges is over 100 years old. We are now here at the verge of building, long-term, sustainable, resilient bridges here that will see, this connection between the states through for the coming century. This is a deep and I think trusted partnership between Washington and Oregon. Up front here, we have Matt Garrett, who's a long-time director at Oregon Department of Transportation, a key colleague here in our partnership of getting this thing ready for construction. These bridges here are the economic lifeline between, not only Washington and Oregon and Portland and Vancouver, but it's part of the West Coast economic lifeline. And so it's critical that we get this thing going, and we are poised to do so. We are using Progressive Design Build as the vehicle to approach this first significant contract that will be the starting place of a series of follow-on contracts here. But this is going to be the center piece that will make way for light rail, high-capacity transit, and the additional improvements within the 5 miles that make up the IBR program. Progressive Design Build allows us some great opportunities here to bring the collaboration that we have between the two states and the scopes of work between the two states and work through, final design, design, innovation, managing our risks and uncertainties and come up with a collaborative plan to be successful in replacing these bridges. WashDOT's been using Progressive Design Build now for, I think going on around 6-7 years. We've got a few projects under our belt or underway, and all have been going very well, and I would have been viewed as very successful. So I think we're excited as a delivery method here, and it really is important when you look at this crowd here and you think about all of the opportunity that comes with a project and a program of this stature, and while it can't be delivered without the prime contractors and joint ventures they're required to deliver, projects of this significance, the subcontracting and vendor opportunities are extensive, right? This is a huge kind of generational project that has a vast amount of opportunity for every size of contractor, designer, et cetera, that can be involved in this. Huge labor opportunities, and it has all of the peripheral benefits that come from spending billions of dollars in these communities. So you have the restaurants, the hotels, all of the influences on the economy that come with it, this project and program that we're really excited about. I want to acknowledge here, we've got a number of our support support groups here and our community partners. We can't be successful here in delivering a program like this without some of our small and disadvantaged and minority community business partners. Many of them are here in the room. And I'd suggest, we need, our goal here is to make sure that these opportunities are available. Everybody knows how to get certified and get in the queue to be able to participate. So with that, I think I'm going to pass it on to Frank Green here, and he's going to talk a little bit about the IBR program as a whole.
Thank you, John. Frank Green, Assistant Program Administrator. Hello? Okay. I want to thank everyone for attending today. Saw a lot of familiar faces that we've met throughout the years with other industry events and conversations, and met a few new ones. So really appreciate you attending today. Your attendance and your interest in this program excites the program team and the agencies looking forward to move this program forward. So I wanted to touch base a little bit on, as John said, the full program area that we've been talking about. It's a 5-mile program area that, as the program was looking forward to deliver this program, provides some of that resilience that John had mentioned, strengthening those aging structures to be seismically updated, as well as provides connections for people and goods to cross the Columbia River. And if you can go to the next slide, Robert. And so in order to achieve the 5-mile corridor improvements, I think this is a graphic that's on some of the materials that we have, and we've spoken to this before, but there's a lot of proposed projects and contracts and opportunities for designers and contractors to work on this program as you move through the 5-mile corridor. And we've always kind of made it clear that to make these investments, we have to start with the river, start with the bridge, because all of these investments need to connect to that bridge to be able to physically be constructed and to be operable. And so one of the key things that we know we've worked on is the funding for the program. There's been a significant amount of funding committed by both the state of Oregon, the state of Washington, and some federal grants that have been secured that really allows us to move forward with a lot of the discussion today that is the first funded phase, as we call it. As John mentioned, WashDOT and ODOT have delivered big projects, and there's a lot of history, especially in the Puget Sound, with how to deliver mega projects in a phased approach. And this is very similar, where we know you have to start with the bridge and then work your way out, north and south of there with the other investments. And so the next slide, Robert, kind of highlights what we're going to talk a lot about today, which is the first funded phase that we have. Dwayne will come on here in a minute and give a lot of detail about the kind of the top part of this slide, which is what we're calling the Columbia River Bridge Replacement project. That includes the contract that'll build the new bridges over the river, the connections on the north and south end, so the approaches to that bridge. That includes some of the work at Hayden Island and the SR-14 area, as well as removing the existing bridge. So those are all parts of the program that are very closely intertwined, and working with a progressive design builder to understand how to deliver that would be crucial. But there's also a couple of other packages that we'll talk about a little bit later that within this first funded package will move forward. We know one of the big grants we're still looking to pursue is a capital investment grant for some of the transit work. And so there'll be some transit design work that we'll be contracting later into next year with trying to advance the design to be able to keep that grant process moving, as well as some of the tolling infrastructure that'll be needed to begin tolling as soon as we can move into construction. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dwayne Matlock, who is the project manager for the Columbia River Bridge Replacement project.
Is this one on? Okay, like Frank said, I'm Dwayne Matlock. I'm the project manager for this first funded phase. Next slide. And I just wanted to reiterate that WashDOT is kind of the lead agency, and it'll be administered under WashDOT's contract with our partners at ODOT. We chose the progressive design build delivery method to deliver this one. Right now, our cost estimate is between 3.3 and $3.9 billion. Very large project. So we thought the progressive design build model will fit this quite nicely. Our general timeline right now is we're looking for submitting the request for qualifications in July of this year. And the request for proposals will go out in October. And we would expect to get those proposals back early next year in January, and then hope to have a contractor on board by April of this next year. Next slide, please. So why progressive design build? On such a large, complex project like this that comes with a lot of risk and cost that can be managed up front with bringing a design build team on early in the design process to allow for innovation, allow us flexibility in our schedule and how we build this, how we design it, look for efficiencies and innovations, and helps us build a relationship, a collaborative relationship to be able to look at transparent pricing as we're designing and innovating, also bringing that price component into the discussion so we can make more informed decisions during the design phase, design development phase, so that when we get to that negotiated phase for the phase 2 construction, we've right-sized the contract and we're more efficient and we feel like we're getting value out of our design. Next slide, please. So progressive design build selection process is a lot like the two-step process WSDOT uses for design build contracts. We typically go out early with market outreach like we're doing here today. We use an RFQ and we would evaluate the RFQ and shortlist. And our intent with this project as well is to shortlist to 3 teams. And those 3 teams, we would offer the request for a proposal to propose their strategy on this project. We would evaluate those proposals individually and select the highest scoring proposer. Next slide, please. So what else included in this first funded phase? Obviously, the 2 bridges across the Columbia River. They're single level fixed span bridges with 3 lanes, 3 general purpose lanes with 1 auxiliary lane in each direction. There's a shared use path on the northbound bridge, and there's accommodations for light rail on the southbound bridge. So the width will be there, the structural integrity for light rail we built into the southbound bridge. And then there's connections to I-5 from Hayden Island as well as SR-14. And the final component is to remove the existing structures. Next slide, please. So like John said earlier, there's all disciplines. There's tremendous amount of opportunity on this project for small businesses, local contractors, local labor. This is just a small sampling of all the work activity that's going to be brought into this project. We really look forward to working with the design builders, the subcontractors, local contractors and labor to help us be successful on this project. Like John said, it's an enormous project, enormous opportunity with $3.3 to $3.9 billion worth of work. It's just a lot of an opportunity, and we'll be here for a good 10 to 15 years. Next slide, please. So our timeline, more specifically, we're expecting to get our record of decision here 1st of July. That would allow us to release our request for qualifications on July 6th. Soon after that, we would hold a a submitters meeting that would have much more specific information with respect to the RFQ, what's in the RFQ, and more project-specific information with regard to where we're at with our design. We would expect to get summary of qualifications back in August, mid-August, and then we would notify the shortlisters in October. Shortly after that, we would release our RFP in October. And then our proposal due date would be in January of this next year. And we would hope to select our design builder by April of next year. That would lead us to our notice to proceed contract for phase one, which in the progressive design build realm, the phase one is design development pretty much only. There's some small works projects that could be negotiated in there, but it's mainly designing the project from the conceptual design to a minimum of 60%. That allows us to go ahead and right-size the project and fit within our budget. And we would expect to negotiate a phase one amendment by summer of 27, and then negotiate a notice to proceed phase two, which is the final design and construction in the fall of 2028. Next slide, please. So what's included in our RFP? Our objectives is federal small business goals. We will have goals on this project. Right now, we're still working through obtaining those goals and defining the right size goals for this project. Our other objectives is to minimize impacts to the traveling public, both short-term and long-term, as well as the railroads that we interact with, the marine traffic when we're building across the Columbia River there, and then the local communities as we're building the bridges and the approaches is quite disruptive, but trying to manage that is something that's high on our priority list. As well as environmental stewardship as we're building this contract, our temporary impacts, as well as our long-term impacts, making good design decisions so that the infrastructure that we built is energy efficient and fits within our good stewardship for environmental footprint. Also, proactive project management is part of our objectives to create a relationship with a design build contractor, our local partners, and how they fit into design decisions within their jurisdictions and integrate those ideas and those designs into the final design. We also are looking for technical and innovations in phase one to right size our project and put together a project that is innovative and fits the community and in the best way possible that we can collaborate. We're also looking to create a fair and transparent pricing model within our phase one so that we can quantify the costs at current market value and make good decisions as we navigate through making good design decisions and what we incorporate or don't incorporate into our design, so that we right size the project and we're able to negotiate a reasonable cost to move forward with a design and a contract that we all feel comfortable with. Next slide, please. So what's in our RFQ and how the design build teams will be evaluated? They'll be evaluated by the criteria that you see here, their organizational structure, what the organization itself, what their past experience is with projects of similar scope and complexity. We also want to drill down into the team members that they bring onto the project in key roles, like their their construction manager, design manager, inclusion manager, to make sure that they have experience on projects of this size and complexity. And they're bringing quality team members to the table. We're also evaluate their general approach to how are they gonna approach the design and the collaboration in phase one, as well as the final design and construction in phase two. And then there's a component of just their commercial terms that's part of every contract. So these are the pieces and parts that they'll be evaluated on. And like I said earlier, we'll shortlist 3 teams. And from those 3 teams, we'll offer them a request for proposals to move forward with submitting proposals. Next slide, please. So the criteria in the proposals that we'll use to evaluate these teams is there's an initial responsive commercial terms that's part of the design criteria or evaluation criteria. We'll also evaluate their project technical approach. How innovative are they going to be in phase one? What does their critical path through phase one and phase two look like? What's their sequencing of scheduling and phasing of the construction into phase two? Subcontracting, how we integrate subcontracting and make choices around subcontracting and labor relations, those processes, and how the owners also fit into that decision-making process as we go through phase one and build the design. How do we interface with those local subcontractors and laborers in a collaborative way and integrate them into the contract? We'll also evaluate their federal small business enterprise plan and how detailed that plan is and how well it fits into our goals. We also want to understand their open book pricing, how well and transparent are they with their pricing as we go through and develop the scope for the project in phase one, so that we can make good informed decisions, so that when we do get to that end of phase one design development, that we can get to a reasonable cost for a great value. And then we also want, that's very important to us, is to understand how they approach risk mitigation. So identifying risks, mitigating or eliminating risks through design innovations, and then appropriately quantifying and allocating those risks to the entities that can best manage those risks, whether it's the owner, whether it's the design builder, or whether it's the designer. We really want to understand their approach to that. Then there's a price proposal to this first phase, the design development phase, which is essentially time and materials. But the component that's created as part of this criteria is just their fee. What's their fee for overhead and profit for this first funded phase? And then one item down here, the interviews, is unique to progressive design build, that you don't typically see that in a design build contract. We would expect each of the design build teams to participate in the interview process, and that'll be a scored part of their criteria. Next slide, please. So some of our objectives in phase one is to maximize our collaboration with the design builder. We really want to be innovative. We want to create a collaborative environment, an environment where it's free thinking. Every idea is a good idea, and try to right size the project and come up with some of the best ideas that we can to minimize our cost and our scope and our schedule. We've set a goal of 14 months to do this phase one portion, to develop our design from 30% to at least a minimum of 60%. We have objectives for the open book pricing, like I said before, so that we can get to a reasonable negotiations. We want to understand the approach to FSBE and small business and subcontracting and their competitive bid process. And the owner, we want to be part of that, WashDOT and ODOT, we want to be part of that decision-making process. As bids come in for the different disciplines, we want to be integrated into that decision-making process so that we feel good about how we interact with the subcontracting and the local community here. And then how we identify and mitigate risk. One of our main objectives here is to, at the end of that 14 months, at least come to a portion of the project that's developed enough that we can negotiate a phase 2 construction cost for at least a portion of that construction. Maybe not the entire project, first funded phase, but we want to get to construction in 2028. That's our goal. And so if we can right size a piece and that's ready for construction, that's one of our main goals. Next slide, please. So with that, like John said, there's plenty of information around the periphery here where you can get more information on this first funded phase and the whole program as it gets built out. So please take information and utilize their websites, the email. We're open for any kind of input from all the design build contractors, subcontractors. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bobby.
Thanks, Dwayne. So first of all, good afternoon. Thank you. That makes me warm and fuzzy. Now I can calm down just a little bit, okay? My name is Bobby Forch, and I am the Inclusion and Compliance Administrator for Washington State Department of Transportation mega programs. Before I get started, there's a couple of things that I'd like to point out. First and foremost, I really want to emphasize the bi-state nature of this delivery of this project. It is very important. And I want to start out by doing that by identifying, so I'm breaking script a little, so you guys got to kind of roll with me, right? Breaking script a little, I've introduced myself, but there are some other key partners in our bi-state team that I want to identify, and I really would like you to stand up. Serena Stottlemyre, Wesley, there you do. I see you. I see you. I see you, please. Aiden Grodenauer, I see you. Barbie Alexander, I see you. Tracy Johnson, don't hide. And if I've forgotten anybody, I apologize, but the reason that I did that is I want you to understand that this is a bi-state effort. We have members from both sides of the river, but we act as one. These people in the FSBE community are your unlock, and you need to know who they are. Please remember their faces and be intentional. Go up, meet them, talk to them, understand what they do, because they're your Sherpas, they're your guides through this event. This is a journey, right? This is a long-term journey, and it'll take each and every one of us in this room. It also, from a small business standpoint, is transformative. And so when we talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit about the goals and the certifications, but at the end of the day, each and every one of you who have participated here know that this project and participating on it can be business changing, but most importantly, life changing, and change your decisions about where you live, what you eat, where your kids go to school. And we want to be a part of forming that with you. So with that, let's get into some of the nuts and bolts that you've been waiting for. So this project is going to have an FSBE goal, Federal Small Business Enterprise Commitments. We refer to them as contract requirements, but more than requirements, they are a value. They are a value both for the WashDOT and ODOT folks. And values are the fuel that drives the mission. This is very important to us, and it starts from the very, very top and works its way down to the project folks that you see here. They're here for a reason because they're experts at delivering this element of the delivery. So with that, their enforceable goals, as I mentioned, they'll be administered through WashDOT and through our Office of Equity and Inclusion. The goals are required, and there'll be goals on phase 1 and phase 2. Dwayne talked a little bit about phase 1 and phase 2. We have a board here that kind of explains delivery methods. I always say it's important to go look at those boards so you understand the terrain that you're walking on, because it's kind of a combination of delivery, money, and all those things can determine how you kind of move through the terrain. The beauty of our progressive design build delivery method is collaborative and it's transparent. And so we work closely with our builder and our team to form and shape what those goal sets look like and the participation. So it's I believe, an ideal combination, and specifically for a project this size. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So certification, I know a lot of people are interested in certification for WashDOT project, FSBE certification. Again, as I mentioned before, it's administered by the Washington State Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprises. I believe there's going to be some information, and I know Barbie, who's back there, can give you some key information about how that works. Firms, regardless of which state across the USA that you're from, or where you're located, including those in Oregon, we invite you and we hope to see you participating on this project. I always say, in the end of the day, some things are just administrative, right? Name, rank, serial number, couple other little digits, you're in. The door's open. So take the time to do that, and it's important to do that early, okay? Business criteria, for-profit business, not to exceed 31 million in gross receipts over a 3-year average, located here in the US. Next slide, please. Owner criteria, the owner, at least 51%, and for most of you who are certified as FSBE, DBEs, you know how this works, right? You got to be a majority owner, 51% owner, and your control of the day-to-day operation of the business. You have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident in the United States. You also have to be economically disadvantaged, and generally the rule or the definition for that, you'll see the number there, the 2.047 million. It changes, so I always have to check from year to year. It goes a little up, but that's the number that we have today. And of course, this doesn't include your your primary residence. Firms must be registered as FSBE prior to the execution of your contract. I can't express this enough, because we have an open book approach to FSB participation. It's important that you be procurement ready, and being procurement ready means that you have all the certifications and everything that you need prior to us going into that aspect of small business contracting. Next slide. So business support. WashDOT provides small business support. You can see on the slide in many different areas. It's important to us not only that you participate, but as you know, in big projects like this, we want you to thrive. We want you to grow. And to be able to do that, we want to provide the proper wraparound that supports you, because once you get the job, that's sometimes the easier part. Keeping the job and being successful at the job can sometimes be the hardest part. So we want to make sure that there's support for you so you thrive and you get all the information, training, wraparound that you need. I want to point out just a couple of things on here. You see a list of things in Washington State. We have safe harbors. Get familiar with how that works. It can be a little bit of an uphill walk, but it's an important part in terms of playing a role here. Well, let's go to the next slide. I think this is the big crescendo, right? So IBR has a vendor portal. This portal has been in effect for a while. There's thousands of people have signed up for the portal. It is phenomenal. It's the way you can communicate with us. but now you got two ways because you just met our entire team and you have a portal. So whether it's human touch or digital touch, we are there for you in every aspect. It's important for us to stay connected through the journey. And with that, I think I pass it over to John. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. And I also have to shout out my small businesses. For those of you in the room, please understand that many of these folks, they don't have a business manager. They don't have someone to come here and do this for them. They have to come themselves. And many times they have to stop work to be here. So with that, for people in the room, be intentional. Do not leave here without meeting someone that you didn't know before you came here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. So a little bit about, I want to kind of foreshadow some things that will be showing up in the request for proposals. A project of this significance and a federally funded project of this significance can't be successfully delivered without partnership with our tribal partners on both sides of the river and our building, construction, carpenter, and trade unions. It's a significant, we're building this project on historical lands and waters of tribes on both sides of the river. Our intention on this program, is to have a tribal employment program and subcontracting opportunities as well for tribes. This is something that takes consultation with our tribal partners. That's an active conversation. At the end of the day, as we work towards releasing the request for proposals, that'll be something that's in the contract as a requirement. And that same goes for our relationship and expectations for labor partnership. Delivering a project like this that's of a long duration, we're talking about this is probably a 6-7 year endeavor to deliver a project of this size and magnitude. We need to ensure we've got a strong partnership with labor, that we're taking actions to avoid disruption and maintain continuity of work, and following all fair and standard labor practices. So, these are things that are going to show up in the request for proposals, and it's something that we want to mention here up front, foreshadowing what's to come here in the contract as we get to releasing that request for proposals later this year. With that, I'm going to turn over to Frank Green here. Oh, well, no, I guess I have another slide. I thought I was just speaking off. Well, that's kind of funny. I forgot my slides. So a little bit more, I think I will go into a little more depth here and recognize in particular the 4 tribes here that we are working with on this endeavor: the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakima Nation, the Cowlitz Indian Tribe, and the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. So those are our tribal partners. We owe them some follow-up here, and we've got some consultation coming up here as we've been working to figure out the scope and approach to this contract. So that's conversations that are coming here, and that will lead to what shows up in the request for proposals and in the requirements of the contract, that consultation. Next slide. And in terms of labor partnerships, I think I kind of spoke to this up front. This is another work in progress here. We're navigating conversations at the federal level about different policies and frameworks and how we represent our partnership with labor in this contract. So more to come, but it is something, it's an active work in progress right now. And you'll see the details expressed in the request for proposals. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Frank Green now.
Thank you. If you can go to the next slide, Robert. So as I mentioned earlier, we have, several opportunities within the first funded phase of the program. We've talked a lot today about the Columbia River Bridge replacement, but we also wanted to identify some of those additional opportunities that are going to be out there for industry in the near future. The first project that we'll talk about is pre-completion tolling infrastructure. So this is a project that will be administered by WashDOT. It's a design bid build project, so we are currently working on finalizing design. The estimated value of this contract is between 20 and 24 million. And the anticipated advertisement date will be really the fourth quarter of this year, so late this year. This contract will look to procure and install gantries for future tolling equipment, as well as sign bridges and installing signs both north and south of the bridge, so in Oregon and Washington, in preparation for, kind of our pre-completion tolling work that we look to go live with when we move forward with construction for the bridge. So this is, a construction opportunity that will be coming kind of along with the Columbia River Bridge Replacement Program that we talked about a little bit earlier. And a second opportunity, or I guess it's a third opportunity, another one that we wanted to mention, if you can go to the next slide, is as I had previously said, we are still progressing toward getting a capital investment grant with FTA. And to do that, we will need to continue advancing design services for the transit portion of the program, the transit both north and south of the existing or of the new proposed bridge. So as Dwayne had mentioned, the Columbia River Bridge replacement that we're advancing will have the width on it to accommodate a future light rail transit. This package that will be administered by TriMet will allow for design to advance and keep us in that capital investment grant process. It'll be designing the infrastructure elements, both south and north of the new replacement bridge, as well as the track and systems to 60% so that we can advance to submitting for that full funding grant agreement. Anticipated advertisement, working really closely with our partner TriMet, will be in 2027 to advance and move this work forward. So as I said, these are in that first funded phase, and there are some additional opportunities kind of above and beyond that Columbia River Bridge Replacement project. So I believe with that, I turn it back over to Kimberly. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So with that, we will take your questions. We have several that have already come in, and we thank you for submitting your questions. We still have the code open, and we'll get through as many of these as we can. So the first couple of questions are actually for Dwayne. And the first question is, when and where will preliminary plans for the proposed package be made available?
So we'll make those plans available on our Ad and Award website, which we're still in the process of getting that set up. But once that's set up, they'll be in that web page at a link. They aren't there yet, but the most up-to-date plan set you're gonna see a preliminary plan set here that go out with the request for qualifications, but there'll be an updated set that comes out with a request for proposal. So that's the one where we'll have our completed design. We'll go out with that request for proposal and all the information as far as geotechnical, all the other information that you would expect as part of our design development starting point. We'll go out with a request for proposal in October.
Okay, thank you. The next question for you, Dwayne, is how will the program balance industry capacity, local business utilization, and a PDB contract approach for both design and construction?
So like I said, this progressive design build model really gives us an opportunity to right size that, working with our design builder, whoever that is. They all have different means and methods of bringing on subcontracting availability and local labor and contractors. But we want a a decision-making part of that strategy in phase one. And that's one of the reasons we did choose a progressive design build is we want to be able to be a good partner in the community and engage the local community, the subcontractors, and create a collaborative process with the design builder as to how we bring on labor, either through a competitive bid process or whether they're local entities, and making sure that we have the right expertise at the right, at the right size project for those entities to make, them successful, make them grow, and which makes our project and our program that much healthier as we build out the next 15 years.
Can I add to that just real briefly, Ryan? I would just add to that, in traditional design build, right? Say in this case, right, where we have small business requirements, right? We assign the responsibility for selecting subcontractors in order to meet those requirements to the design builder. It's their discretion. They need to show us a plan, and then they need to administer that plan and comply with it. In this case here, it's, as William was getting, it's much more collaborative and negotiable, right? So this isn't low bid. It is, there's small business requirements for both design and pre-construction services, as well as for construction subcontracting. And we get to work together to assess, who is submitted, as the design builder goes out to market and solicits bids and quotes. We get to work with them on what they're seeing and what are different pathways to meet the requirements in the contract, and in particular, how is work distributed. And I think that's one of the things where in the past, I'm just speaking from my perspective and 20 plus years of design build where we sometimes get criticized, and how the work is distributed. And I think this is something that, WashDOT's sensitive to, and our Oregon partners are as well. And so I think that's something here where where progressive design build differs, right? Because we get to, have a say and a common vision for how work is distributed. And that can be critical to how the program and project's perceived and is viewed as being successful or not.
Great. Thank you, John. Keep the mic close by. This next one is also for you. If you only have one or two teams that submit on the RFQ, will you still move forward, or will the program still move forward?
Well, as you might expect, I'm going to be careful on what I say to that one. We expect and hope for competition on this, right? Competition brings a range of great ideas and proposed, approaches to success on this project. By nature of progressive design build, it's collaborative, right? We want to have hear differing points of views and how to be most successful delivering this and be able to kind of choose our partner who we believe is the best partner to be successful through a competitive process. That said, there's a reality in the construction market right now where there are a lot around this country of big projects of this scale and around this scale, right? Billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar initiatives. There's other things going on in other sectors that affect us, like the energy and data centers and things like that. That affect our world in terms of depth of availability of contractors, subcontractors, labor, et cetera. So long story short here is we're working hard to connect with the prime contracting community to talk to them about how do we bring people to this successfully? What might be barriers, perceived as barriers to being able to pursue this, knowing that we're in a difficult market and we're competing against a lot of others around. This is a national level project. This is we're competing against a lot of others that are ahead of us and others coming behind us. We want to present ourselves as an owner of preference to work with here, so that we can all have a mutual success on a project of significance. So we'll see how this goes. I cannot answer the question of what happens if we have, say, one. WashDOT has a lot of experience on our big projects of going forward with only two teams, I'll say that. I think, but we want to be able to, our best case scenario and the one we would hope for is to be able to have at least three teams and be able to have a full short list as Dwayne described. So that is our goal and preference.
Thanks, John. Dwayne, this next one is for you. Will the portions of the project being built in Oregon be built to ODOT standards or WashDOT standards?
So for this first funded phase, they're going to be built in phases. So for this first funded phase, it is a bi-state contract. The general specifications are generally going to be for the entire project, whether it's in Oregon jurisdiction or WashDOT jurisdiction. It's going to be mainly WashDOT specifications with ODOT standards sprinkled in there where they make sense and where they add value to long-term maintenance concerns and their standard practices. So it's mainly WashDOT, but I would say there's some caveats to that. There's a few specifications that really need to be integrated to make the design work for both of us, especially for long-term maintenance.
Great. Thank you, Dwayne. I think we have another one for you, Dwayne, is how will the pricing be part of this process, the progressive design build process?
What was it? How will the price be negotiated?
Yes.
Okay, so through phase one, which is our design development phase, where we start with a conceptual design that the owners have put together. We'll develop a design to at least 60%. And through that process, and as I said earlier, our goal is 14 months, could go longer. We will have a series of check-ins with the design builder. WashDOT and ODOT will have our own independent cost estimating team, work with the design builder's cost estimating team with separate estimates, but the same work breakdown structure. So they are talking apples to apples. And so as the design gets developed, those teams will develop their cost estimates. And there's check-in points throughout phase one so that we can check to see where are the differences in costs for each of the work activities. And if there's things that we can make decisions to come together on price on those work activities, whether it's quantities or making different decisions in our design, we'll do that along the way so that we don't end up 14 months from now in negotiating a price that we haven't seen before. We want to do that all the way through phase one.
Dwayne, well, maybe a little thing to add, I think, and Dwayne, you said it, right? I mean, there are multiple milestones here where we are working with our independent construction cost estimator and the design builders cost estimators and working to reconcile, costs based on a common understanding of scope and delivery approach. Early on, though, a key point I think for us in the process-wise is going to be what we would call design validation. I think there's going to be upfront an importance to get to a place where we validate a scope and a base design that we can agree on, and we compare pricing to make sure we're on the have a common vision and have some reasonable alignment going forward, right? So I think that's a key point to probably note here in the iterative approach to developing the design and the pricing.
Thank you. Bobby, the next couple are for you. How does the OMWBE certification as SBE and WBE help qualify for the federal small business enterprise qualification? Is there a parallel certification process, or are their certs maintained separately?
So the process for certification, so you can kind of do it all in one, but I want to make the delineation between W's and S's on state-funded projects, which I'm not sure if that's what the person is asking, versus federally funded projects. And on this project, we're using an FSBE goal. So
It's not clear.
yeah, so it's there are multiple types of certifications, right? But for the purposes of this project, it will be an FSBE goal. That is a federal goal. For those of folks who have been certified as DBEs, by default, you're an FSBE. If you are on the Oregon side and you are certified in the state of Washington, you can do that through application, then you would meet that standard. I think the extra piece to that, if you're not, then you would have to go through that process of getting certified in your home state, and correct me if I'm wrong, Barbie is out there. She's kind of our resident expert. And yes, so all the bases, but as it relates to the question, when they're talking S or W's or M's, we are using the federal standard, and those standards usually apply to our state-funded projects on the WashDOT side.
Wonderful. Okay. I have another question here that Bobby and maybe a few others can answer is, how will apprentices be used on the bridge replacement project? So Bobby or John, would you like to take that? Oh, how will apprentices be used?
We do have.
We have apprenticeship goals. They haven't been set yet, but we will have apprenticeship goals.
Great. Okay. John, can you speak to if there will be future networking opportunities for DBEs, SBEs, WOSBs, and other professional services firms who want to connect with primes to join the team?
The short answer is absolutely. There'll be many opportunities. As I think was described earlier in the presentation, once it's a continual engagement process. So this is a long-term delivery contract here. There's going to be a continuity of engagement with the small and disadvantaged business community. I think ahead of procurement here, we're gonna, if we maintain the schedule here, we'll kick into a formal process in July. There will be, as you heard, a voluntary submitters meeting that becomes another networking opportunity between potential primes and subcontractors and small businesses. Outside of that, once we get to a contract, we will have requirements in the contract for outreach. We do collaborative outreach with our selected design build partners and progressive design build partners. So we work together to schedule outreach and make sure it's an active kind of continuous process at key steps through delivery. So, and on top of that, people like myself and Bobby, Serena, many of us make ourselves available to come out to whether it's NAMAC, OWAMI, other industry partner organizations. We often go out and present updates of our own on a fairly regular basis. So if you are interested and you have questions and things, always feel free to reach out to us and we'll follow up.
Okay, great. We have time for one last question before we close. And John, this one's for you. How confident are you about the proposed RFQ in July?
The RFQ in July? So candidly, to release a request for qualifications in July, we have a few steps with our federal partners of approval. There is the record of decision that you heard referenced here that we're tracking towards the beginning of July on. I have nothing right now that would indicate to me that we're not going to meet that or be close. We have some work that's going on here at the regional level to update the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Plan in the Portland metro area, which is one of the other requirements from our federal partners that the state and regional transportation plans are updated. We've got a kind of a final stop in that process coming up here. And then lastly, we have a requirement from federal highways for progressive design build to get we request a specific approval to use progressive design build as an alternative delivery method on a federally funded contract. So those are all things that are in motion right now and making good progress. So I think the one thing we would commit to here is that if something does influence it, the release date, and it's not going to be the 6th, and it's going to be a slightly different date, we will use our channels that we conducted the outreach for this meeting and all of our contacts, the vendor portal, and all of our other contact lists to provide updates if the date does change. But we are certainly hoping to either meet that date or stay very close to it.
Great, thank you. We have a few closing remarks, John, if you'd like to bring us home.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to thank, it's really encouraging to see this great crowd. And I want to thank each and every person here for taking the time to be here with us and to hear from us. I would encourage everyone here that if you have questions that you'd like to ask more directly or in confidence, we are always here. Bobby and those of us, we have many team members here around these different stations, and we are here to answer all of your questions to the best of our ability. So please don't hesitate to reach out, talk to our team members here, talk to our resource partners here, and make sure you get the best possible information you can. And you have our contact information if things come to mind outside of this. So again, thank you so much for your time. It's very appreciated.
Great, thank you, John. I will add that we went through a lot of content today. We do have this information available on our website, so you can reflect upon it later at interstatebridge.org. We also have a lot of fact sheets and such in the room that have these dates on it. So thank you again for joining us.